Hello chess friends and welcome to your Art of Chess channel and welcome to a new chess strategy and tactics video. So in this video I wanted to show you the minority attack in the middle game stage, and in this video I wanted to show you attacking themes but also defensive ideas in the minority attack, because I think both of these concepts have to be understood. Sometimes you get attacked by the minority attack and basically you don't know how to defend this position. So I've been asked now many times also, please show me also what are your ideas when you get attacked by the minority attack. So as I said, in this video we'll see now attacking ideas but also defensive plans here when you get a minority attack against yourself. So what is the minority attack? The minority attack is a strategic concept in which you are trying to launch an attack with your pawn minority against your opponent's pawn majority. So it means you're attacking basically with maybe 2 of your pawns against your opponent's 3 pawns, or maybe you're attacking with 3 of your pawns against your opponent's 4 pawns. Why should you do it? In my opinion, the most important ideas about the minority attack is to create weak squares or weak pawns. And when you create weak squares or weak pawns, these are then clear targets in the position. So when you're maybe having your opponent's weak pawn, then you just continue to push against this weak pawn. So basically then you know what to do. And I think it's very important in the middle game stage to know what to do, because sometimes we have really complicated positions. There are several tactical possibilities, but when you launch a minority attack, I think the game can be very, very easy for you, because as I said, when you maybe create just a weakness in the position, then it's clearer to play the game. I think we can agree on that, and that's why I think, as I said in the beginning, it's a very important strategic concept that everyone should know. So let's see now the most important the ideas of the minority attack. I've sorted out them here in the right corner. So these are the most important concepts. So when we are launching here, for instance, in this particular position, the minority attack, you see we're attacking with these 2 pawns against 3 pawns here on the queen side. So this is now a pawn structure it's called the Carlsbad Pawn Structure, and it applies many times in the Queen's Game decline, the exchange variation. So that's why I decided also to add this video, this minority attack video, into our Queen's Game decline series that we have started also recently. In my opinion, many of this idea are applied also in the Queen's Game decline, but also in this video we'll see the same strategic idea. So as I said, that's why I decided to add also this video, because this is the same pawn structure that you get in the Queen's Game decline exchange variation. So let's see now what can be the outcome of a minority attack. So we're trying now b4, a4, a5, b5, and what you can get maybe is this kind of a pawn structure. When you trade off now, for instance, the a pawn for the a pawn and the b pawn for the b pawn, you can get this kind of a pawn structure. And you see now we have created at least 2 weaknesses now in the position. You see now here in the right corner we have here already weak square, it's this c5 square, and we have now a backward pawn here, the square on the square c6. So we have now really created clear ideas where to attack the position, and that's, I think, a good thing when you're playing now the middle game stage. Because if you could just imagine now the position with many pieces on the board, maybe you have sort of a rook battery on the c file, you have the rook on c1, maybe the rook on c2, maybe you have the queen on a4 attacking still the pawn on c6, maybe you have a knight here on c5 that's outposted here. So you have really great chances. Then of course in the middle game stage it's much easier than to play the game. So you can also maybe create this kind of a position. Maybe you have sacrificed the b pawn, but you have created now 3 weaknesses. Look at this, you have created the b7 pawn as a weakness, the b5 pawn as a weakness, also the d5 is now isolated. So you have created 3 pawn islands with 1 pawn move. So you have split the pawn chain, and now again we have clear ideas where to attack. Now maybe we have a rook on the b file, again maybe we have the knight on c5, maybe we have here sort of a attack on this dark square weaknesses that are present here. So it's, again, in my opinion, very easy to play the game. So you can also maybe create, I've sorted also very important strategic concept, the c file attack, because many times black is trying to castle queenside in these types of positions. So that's why many times you have tactical possibilities with knight to b5, knight to d5. Maybe there are even some rook batteries here on the c file. So the c file attack should not be forgotten in this minority attack ideas, because I will show you in a couple of examples that actually many times black is losing the game on the c file because white has a dominant position on this file, and many times white and black are putting the queens on the c file. If you could just imagine now, even the position with any any other piece, then there's always this tactical shot, knight to d5, knight to b5. So always this kind of an idea applies when you might maybe try to launch first a flank attack here with the move b4, b5. But notice also the c file attack is very, very important here. So I've sorted out also here a bad bishop strategy that can be played. So maybe your opponent has defended this position, so you're trying to launch a flank attack here like this, but you have reached this position. Okay, maybe you didn't create structural weaknesses immediately, but I think many times what you can do in the middle game stage with your minority attack is to provoke a bad bishop strategy. And you see now the bishop on c8, many times I won games by playing this kind of idea. Many times the bishop on c8 is stuck, it's simply paralyzed by its own pawn structure. Look at this: c6, b7, a6, d5, f5. All of these pawns are on light squares, and although the material is equal, but I would love to have now a knight in the center of the board like this. So here in this potential position, for instance, the knight should be much better. So although we didn't maybe create a split pawn chain, we maybe did not create here a backward pawn like in this particular example, maybe we didn't create it, but still I think we can be satisfied with this particular position, because now our knight is much more powerful than the bishop. What you can also get here is, I like to call it here 2 versus 3 pawn equality. What I mean about this, it's actually that many times when you launch a pawn minority attack, that you could get this kind of a position. So we're starting again a4, b4, but then you suddenly get this kind of a position, and notice that these 2 pawns are holding these 3 pawns. So it's almost like the 2 pawns are equal to 3 pawns. So what I mean about this, maybe we're trading off now more pieces, we're trading off now more material, and we're reaching now this kind of an endgame where the material is equal. But look at this, as I said, our 2 pawns are holding our opponent's 3 pawns. So it's almost like they're equal, but still when the material is equal, still we have of course our extra pawn, and now we have suddenly a winning endgame. So as I said, sometimes we cannot, by using the pawn minority attack, sometimes we cannot get this kind of a position where we have a clear idea, when we have c6 backward pawn and maybe the c5 as a weak square in the position. But as I said, sometimes you get this kind of an attack, and now maybe you can use of course of the b file, maybe you can create a rook battery on the b file. Okay, the pawn on b7 is also weak, but as I said, sometimes you can reach this kind of an endgame where 2 pawns are holding 3 pawns, and now although the material is equals here, it's much white is winning for sure, because you have here this passer on the g file. So as I said, these are the most important strategic concepts when you reach this kind of a position. What you can also do, you can also use the pawn minority attack against your opponent's castle king. So we'll see also this kind of an example, because sometimes you're trying to launch a flank attack, you're sacrificing even some pawns, you're trying to attack with 2 of your pawns against your opponent's 3 pawns, but that just in order to create some madness, just in order to open some files in front of your opponent's king. So the pawn minority attack can be also used as this kind of a strategic concept. So let's see now a couple of examples. Here it was a beautiful gameplay by Mikhail Tal with the white pieces, and you see now we have now almost the same pawn structure here. The difference is now only this pawn on f6. So you see we have again this Carlsbad pawn structure. Again, we should now launch a flank attack, b4, b5. We're trying to split the pawn chain, we're trying to create strategic weaknesses. At least what we're trying to do is this kind of a position where we have this backward pawn and maybe here this weak square on c5. So here Mikhail Tal played immediately b4, and when you are launching a flank attack, when you're launching this pawn minority attack on the queen side, you should not lose time. So now even if black takes, now for instance if black takes bishop to b4, at least we can play rook to b1 attacking the bishop. Okay, black can maybe protect the bishop for a while, but we just play a3, and now suddenly we pick up the pawn on b7, and notice now we have reached again the same position that we wanted to get. We want to get this picture, sort of this backward pawn, this weak pawn on weak square on c5. Now when that happened, we have reached it, and now obviously we're going to occupy the c5 square. We're going to maybe push further here against this weak pawn on c6. So it's again, in my opinion, much easier now to play the game here from white's perspective. So you see, after move b4, there's nothing that can be done so far. So that's why you should not lose time. Consider some wilder moves a little bit, because many of us would play this attack slowly, would try maybe a3 and then b4, but with a3 b4 it's a different story. So maybe black can paralyze the position, maybe black can play the move a5, slow down your attack a little bit. So that's why you should be always fast. Consider the fastest move, consider the most aggressive move, and now the most aggressive move is of course b4, although it's a temporarily sacrifice. But you saw what happens, for instance, if you play that, if you play bishop to b4, then you get destroyed for sure. The b7 would be then hanging. So in the continuation we had here bishop to d6, rook to b1, we have bishop to g3, h takes d3, and now here mission accomplished. I think here Mikhail Tal occupied the c5 square and won the game eventually. Okay, this is maybe not the position that white wins for sure, but as I said also, we have talked about this bad bishop strategy. Look at this, many pawns are on light squares. The bishop on f7 is okay, it is protecting the king, but when it comes to potential endgame, look at this, the knight is much more powerful here than the bishop on f7. We have here really a beautiful bad bishop strategy. So I don't want to show you now the whole game, I wanted to show you just this concept, sacrificing maybe something just in order to create again some wild attacking ideas. Be fast with the move b4 like Mikhail Tal did here. Don't hesitate, don't lose any tempo. If you lose maybe one tempo, your opponent, as I said, can maybe do something else and he can regroup, he can get then maybe a better position. So here is another example of the possibility of a minority attack. So again, as I said, don't hesitate, don't lose any time, just go straight forward. Here it's a game played by Benko with the white pieces. He played immediately b5. Even if you have to even maybe sacrifice some material, don't count anything, because sometimes, as I said, you can maybe reach this kind of a position where you split the pawn chain, you can create again new weaknesses. Now the b5 is weak, b7 is weak, d5 is weak. So again, it's much easier now for white to play the game. So here in the game played by Benko, his opponent Mark Taimanov tried rook to e8. We have b takes c6, b takes c6, e3, fixing everything, knight to e2. Look at this now here Benko simply regrouped and occupied again the weak c5 square. So like we have talked about in the beginning, we have again the backward pawn on c6 and the weak square on c5. So again, I don't want to show you now the whole game, that's not the point about this video. Still, okay, many things can go wrong if you don't calculate the position, if you maybe miss something, if you miss some tactics. But from a strategical point of view, I think white should be much better, because our game is much easier to play. Again, I'm repeating myself, sorry if I'm repeating myself too much, but as I said, rook to c2, maybe queen to c1, just continue to push. It's so easy now to play the game because of just one, maybe two strategic weaknesses in black's camp. So let's see now another example. So again, we have a position where okay, we have here the 2 versus 3 possibility of a pawn minority attack, but we are scared a little bit. We don't want to play the move b4, but actually again, consider the fastest move, the most aggressive move. Again, the move b4 is actually working here, because if you take here now with bishop to b4, then you get knight to b3, queen to c7 has to be played down. Now look at this, with queen to e4 we have a double attack against the bishop and also against the knight. You're pretty much forced to play now the move bishop to d6, but now with queen to d4 there's simply not a good way anymore to protect this position. There is maybe a good choice not to play just the move g5, protecting it for a while, but in my opinion this is a bad game now for black. The king is open, the king is naked, so this is, I think, a position that white should win for sure. So as I said, again, consider the fastest, the most aggressive move, consider the option of an early attack, because you have to do something on this side of the board. Although you have 2 pawns, your opponent has 3 pawns, but now the b4 move was a beautiful idea. It was a great gameplay by Alexander Alhin against Max Juve. So really great move here, the move b4. So let's see now another example, and maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. We have obviously some strategic weaknesses. We have now the move, the backward pawn on c6 again, and the weak square on c5. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now here really the best continuation here for white. So it's very important now to play the game like this, because we have to say black has regrouped here. Black has the opportunity to improve his backward pawn. He is trying to play c5. That's now the bad problem of whites. I think black can improve actually this position. Black can regroup back. Black can get back into the game. So that's why we should stop him. So how to stop this potential progress of black? So okay, here it was a beautiful game by Samuel Reshevsky. He played first bishop to a6. He undermined the c-file dominance that black has here, so that's why black has to retreat now. And again, as we mentioned before, there is always maybe the opportunity of this c-file attack. So you see now there is always the tension somehow on the c-file here. After move bishop to a6 and rook to d8, there was this move, knight to b5, a stunning tactic that opens simply the position. You cannot of course take out with the pawn because your rook is hanging in the game. Here knight to b5 was played. We have a takes b5, and now after move rook to b8, here Samuel Reshevsky got out of the range and he still has his progress on the c-file. So don't forget about the potential c-file attack. That's, I think, a very nice method that you should apply in the minority attack. Don't forget about this, because sometimes you started with your attack on the b-file, but then you changed a little bit direction now to the c-file. Here again, black has now several tactical problems. Here bishop to f5 was played, but now look at this. Black got challenged with this move, rook to c5, and of course white is going to continue the pressure with rook to c1 and similar stuff, and basically the game is strategically over. Of course, still black can battle, black can struggle, but in my opinion, this is not the position that you want to have here from black's perspective. So let's see now another example. Here it's a beautiful game played by Magnus Carlsen against Fabiano Caruana. We have now this situation that we have talked about. Sometimes we have here this two pawns that are holding 3 pawns, or maybe we can say here 3 pawns are holding 4 pawns in black's position. So basically it's a 3 versus 4 pawn equality here. Here it's almost the same, like Magnus Carlsen had the position against Caruana. Here the 3 pawns of whites are targeting all of these dark squares, and they're holding really 4 pawns of blacks, which is really now bad for black. Well, here Fabiano Caruana had really a bad game. The knight is a little bit out of game. We have still also, again, I'm pointing out the bad bishop on e6 many times. This bishop is just a bad piece like this, so you should not forget about this when you're also playing the game with the black pieces. You maybe should trade it off earlier with g6, bishop to f5 if possible. Get rid of the slice for bishop, because it's simply almost like a big pawn, like a tall pawn, like everyone likes to say. So it's simply a too bad piece now in black's camp. So here Magnus Carlsen played a brilliant move. Maybe you can also try to pause the video again and maybe search for the best continuation here of sorry, I got a call. We're not going to answer that. Sorry. So after move knight to c8, here there is, as I said, a beautiful choice that you can play. You can play here again very aggressively. That's, I think, the point. Like in the previous example, we saw many times b4 was an opportunity to create some madness immediately. Now in this particular game, b5 was the beautiful choice by Magnus Carlsen. It is risky, of course, but now after a takes b5, look at this now. Again, this beautiful c-file attack, and now the game is rolling. White is having here a dominant position. You have to step back now with the queen to d8 was played, and okay, nothing special so far, but look how Magnus Carlsen battled now for all of this square. c5, b6 is weak. Look at this. He's continuing even the pressure here on the a file. Here after b takes a6, we have rook to a6, rook takes bishop to a6, and again this position, backward pawn on c6 and the weak square on c5. Now of course knight to a4, knight to c5 is an opportunity, and again, in my opinion, white should have really fun game. So let's see now another example. As I said, sometimes this pawn minority attack is also possible in other positions, so it doesn't have to be necessary in some queen's gambit, decline the exchange variations, and maybe in some English opening lines. Sometimes you can also see it in Sicilians, in Perch defenses, as I said, but the main concept remains. We are trying to create, look at this in the right corner, weak squares or weak pawns. That are the most important strategic concepts. When you have created 3 or maybe 4 weaknesses in the position, then it's much easier to play the game. Here also, almost look at this, like this pawn on a4 is holding these 2 pawns. So we have again sort of a one pawn is equal to 2 pawns, like in this previous examples then that we saw, when 2 pawns are holding maybe 3 pawns. So that's why this pawn on a4 is basically holding the whole queenside here. So we have here almost like pawn equality, but without a pawn. So that's why here we can really continue the pressure. And now of course here we have the possibility of a beautiful pawn minority attack with the move b5, c takes b5, bishop to b5, knight to b5, and queen to b5. And look at this, this knight and the pawn are holding these 2 pawns. So this is the backward pawn. It's an obvious strategic weakness. Okay, we have also here, we have to say weakness on d6, but at least we have somewhere to attack the position. That's, I think, now very important to say. So here we have bishop to e2, queen to c5. I found this game in the book, so here I'm not sure who is playing, but I think this was a cool example how the minority attack is also possible in different openings in different side lines. Here from queen to c5, queen to c5, knight to c5, and now here black got challenged, has also this isolated pawn, we have to say it, but I think the b file attack is much harder now for black to defend. Here rook to d6, and now after rook to b2, look at this, the rook is coming into the game here on the second rank. This pawn is weak, so in my opinion this is not a position again that you want to get from white's perspective. So as I said, sometimes launch this flank attacks, launch this minority attacks even in other positions. So a really usual minority attack is happening many times in Sicilians, so many times in this open Sicilians, like in the Nider for Chevening system, some French Sicilians and similar stuff. Many times you are trying to also play a flank attack with these 2 pawns against these 3 pawns. So the idea is again the same. We want to create weak pawns or weak squares. We want to create open files, open lines against our opponent's king. So that's why this minority attack makes really sense. So that's, I think, also common idea. So don't forget about this. Now we can maybe try to push the pawn further, so it creates again at least some kind of attacking opportunity. Maybe in the near future we can also try to sacrifice some pawns here, just in order, as I said, to open the position against the king. So don't forget about this. The pawn minority attack is a very important strategic concept. Although this is now again not the Queen's Gambit declined exchange version, this is of course a Chevening Nider. So here in the continuation, let's see now another example. Again, a beautiful game played by the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Here we have a wild situation. Here Magnus Carlsen will launch a pawn minority attack in front of his own king. So it seems risky, but when you think about it harder, this makes really sense, because there's nothing that can be attacked. If, for instance, white tries to push here, creating sort of a pawn majority attack, this could be risky because black has a beautiful activity already on c file, on the b file. Actually, here in this particular position, I think black is going to be the attacker here with the pawn minority attack. Will play maybe a6, b5, maybe b4. We'll try to open the b file. We'll try maybe to sneak in with the rook somehow, attacking the position on the second rank. This is maybe now black's idea. But Magnus Carlsen had also here a beautiful idea in mind. He wanted to now also to create his pawn minority attack, because we have to agree the pawn structure is asymmetrical here. So we have here a 4 versus 3 situation on the queen side, but also a 3 versus 4 situation on the king side. So we have here now 4 pawns, and white is here now 3 pawns. Here Magnus Carlsen played a brilliant move. He attacked immediately the knight with the move g4, knight to e7, and now he's continuing the pressure, f4. Okay, now comes this idea, a6, b5. Black is also trying his minority attack, but now with queen to b2, Magnus Carlsen opened the position in a beautiful way, create really already some madness. And now look at this, the pieces are dancing, the position is open, all of these pieces are very active. The knight is centralized, the rook is very active, the queen is on the g file. This rook can be included into the game very easily. As I said, really bad game now for black. So we have b4, but this is not simply too slow. You see how important it is not to lose any time, any tempo. If you lose one tempo, you will probably lose the game. Here we have rook to f1, and now here black got out of the attack because the threat was of course rook to f6. Queen to f6 wouldn't be then a possibility, so that's why king to f8. Now rook to g5 was played by Magnus. We have b takes c3, but Magnus Carlsen did lose again. Anytime he played simply rook to g7. Here c takes b2 was played, but now this comes with a check, and here after move queen to g6 in this position, black resigns. So there are also this cover attack possibilities. The king is naked, the knight is loose. There are also some check possibilities here on the 8th rank, so it's game over. So this are, in my opinion, the most important strategic concepts of the attack. So now we'll do the defense, but let's repeat again the most important ideas of the minority attack. So we're trying to create a weak square or weak pawns. Sometimes we can play on sort of a bad bishop strategy. Sometimes the c-file attack we have seen as a very important strategic concept, and also this weak squares I think are clear directions of our game. That's, I think, the most important thing, because sometimes really the middle game can be so complicated. In my opinion, using the minority attack can be then a very easy choice for you. So let's see now the most important defensive ideas of the minority attack. Here I've sorted out a common position. Let's play now the game a little bit from black's perspective. So as I said, this video will be added also into our Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation series that we have started recently. It's part of our whole playlist of the Queen's Gambit decline. You can also check it out. It was a video that I created a couple of days ago. So in my opinion, this is also almost the same, because it's a position now that can happen due to all of the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. And you see now with the move rook to b1, your opponent could maybe prepare the move b4, which is, as I said, the main goal of the minority attack. b4, b5, and then create this again idea, b takes c6, b takes c6, and then create here a backward pawn on c6 and the weak square on c5 we have talked about in the beginning. So now how to play against this kind of stuff. So here the first important idea is to slow down a little bit your opponent's attack. So maybe he's trying to play the move b4, but don't allow him to play the move b4 in the first place. So he can maybe play that afterwards. But I think here a5, for instance, in this position is very important. At least you're not allowing him to play the move b4 immediately. So he'll prepare this move. You cannot compete against this move. This move will come. It's not the point about that. But at least your opponent will need maybe 2-3 moves in order to make the b4 move happen. That's, I think, the huge difference about the game without the move a5 or with the move a5. See, now we have slowed down a little bit the pace of the game. We have slowed down his attack. The problem is now, if he prepares, for instance, the move b4 with the move a3, then we can even paralyze him with the move a4. That's now the beauty about the move a5. So see now, b4, for instance, is not coming now in a direct way. We can take en passant, and now the game is a little bit different. You see now, it's not the same anymore. Okay, we still have the backward pawn, but I think in the near future we can even try some ideas of b5. Look at this, knight to b6, knight to c4 is an opportunity. Look at this pawn is weak on a3. Suddenly we are better, I think, here on the queen side, and in my opinion this is not the way to go. So you see how much problems this move a5 is making in white position. So black has to be really careful when the minority attack is coming. As I said, the main strategic concept is to slow down the pace of the attack. So I've sorted out, as I said here, that's very important idea. So the other important thing is when your opponent is advancing the pawn on b4. So if he does it, for instance, if he plays b4, let's imagine he can do it, he leaves also his c4 unprotected. So when the pawn is coming on b4, notice that he's also leaving spaces behind. So now we can play b5, knight to b6, and then knight to c4. This is a common, really most often played strategic defensive concept of blacks in this types of position. The outpost on c4. Don't forget about this. When your opponent is playing b4, the pawns cannot go backwards, of course. He doesn't have anymore the possibility to push the pawn on b3 and protect the c4 square. So this is also very important important idea. Here the third thing that I've sorted out as a beautiful defensive strategy is here to keep the pawn flexibility. So we're playing sort of move b6. b6 allows us now to play then afterwards c5. b6, c5 creates really sort of a mobile pawn structure. Then we can even push the pawn on c4, and suddenly the pawn minority attack could change maybe into a pawn majority attack by black, because we have now then the dominant position. So sometimes it's very cool here to push the pawn on b6. Maybe black can play, pardon me, white can play maybe something like b4 here. But notice if b5 happens, then we have the flexibility to push the pawn on c5. So that's what I mean about this pawn flexibility, keeping a little bit here the position flexible on the queen side. So what I've sorted out is also this possibility of a center attack and a central control. What I mean about is that actually in some of these lines you can try, maybe not in this particular position, but I'll explain it of course in a couple of examples further. You can try to regroup around the square e4. This e4 square can be used in order to have really fixed position in the center, and then with the position is fixed in the center, we can maybe launch an attack here on the king side. So I'll explain you. It will be very easy to explain in a couple of examples, because now, okay, the knight is pinned, then you cannot play of course knight to e4, but we'll come to that moment in a couple of examples. So also what I've sorted out as an important strategy here is this rook lift defense. This rook lift defense is when you are left maybe with the backward pawn on c6. So as we said in the beginning, we can maybe reach this position. It's very cool to have maybe a rook here on d6. This would be a very nice thing, I think, for us. You can imagine maybe this position with the move rook to d6. Then the rook is very flexible. The rook is used as a defensive piece on c6, so it protects our backward pawn. But it can be useful here also maybe on g6, where it attacks the king on g2. So that's, I think, also a nice defensive strategy. You should not forget about this strategy. It's very helpful. I'll show you in a couple of examples. So as I said, let's see now, first of all, this example where white is trying to launch a flank attack immediately with the move b4. So as I said, we are slowing down his progress. Here in one game that I found in the database, it was a game played by Tisdal against Sveshnikov. Sveshnikov played here really a beautiful game with the black pieces. Here after move queen to e7, here white continues with the plan. As I said, there's nothing that can be done against the move b4. But notice in this scenario, white already played, let me see, once. He played already one move because of your a5 move. Now after queen to e7, he played twice. And now after move rook to e1, he played 3 times. So he was still insecure to push the pawn on b4 immediately. And now after move queen to e6, bishop to g3, we have bishop to f8, and now finally b4. So as I said, maybe you cannot prevent this move b4, but at least you can slow it down. I think you get now what I'm trying to say. So as I said, but also what we have talked about, when your opponent is pushing now the pawn on b4, notice now that c4 is unprotected. So now these weak squares are very useful. Look at this, knight to b6 is coming, like in this previous example. Look at this, the queen is protecting our backward pawn, but the queen is quite useful here also here in the kingside attack. So knight to f4, we have queen to c8, we have this one, knight to d3, and this is all beautiful. This is a perfect position for black here. Black has solved now every positional problem. The knight is outposted on c4, and we have still a good control of the e4 square. The rook is very active, and we have certain things that I think can be done. We can open even the a file. We can even play either bishop to e7. Queen to f5 seems, in my opinion, like a good move. Maybe we can include the queen into the attack. So in my opinion, from this point on, black is taking over. So look at this, rook to a1, a knight to e4, very nice move by Sveshnikov, rook to c1, rook to e7. Now white is trying still to open the position, but now black regroups and create this rook battery. So again, I don't want to show you now the whole game, because sometimes you have to also study something for yourself. We cannot just explain everything in these videos. You have to study, of course, tactics. You have to study openings. But in my opinion, the strategic concept of the minority attacks, I think we can solve here at least. Now, of course, you have to calculate this position. What happens if we take on b4? What happens if we take on a4? But these are tactical problems in the game. The minority attack is a more strategic problem in the game that happens to us. So let's see now another example. Here, it was a beautiful game by Garry Kasparov. And you see now, Garry played here with the black pieces against Lajos Portish. Garry Kasparov got already challenged with the move b4, and playing, for instance, the move b5 would be very risky here. Okay, you could maybe try this maneuver, knight to d7, knight to b6, and knight to c4. But actually, the problem is now with the move a4, the position can be already broken. So it's not the same position like in the previous example where Sveshnikov had the battery on the a file. So it's now risky to play this kind of a move. But as I said, the center attack, the idea to simplify the game, I will call it really simplify the game sometimes with this beautiful motif. There is this beautiful defensive motif, the central control around the square e4, because after bishop to e7, let's see possible continuation, queen to e7, look at this now, the queen is suddenly connected here to the knight on e4, and the problem is now white cannot take. White would love, of course, to get rid of this centralized knight, but now with d takes e4, there is a tactical problem. You get the fork against the queen and the knight. So this is a very important defensive hop, sort of. So also calculate this idea sometimes it's not possible, but as a good defensive strategy this could work. So here Lars Portish played bishop to f4, knight to c3 by Gatti. We have queen to c3, bishop to d6, and look how Gatti simplified the game, how he rerouted the knight on the square that he wanted to play. Now the knight is coming on c4 or on e4 for sure. So these squares are very useful, of course, in the position. So in my opinion, black has now already a solid game. So we have now rook to e1, queen to g5, we have queen to g7, and now rook to e6. Here Garry Kasparov improved simply the position in the center of the board. And now look at this, Garry is creating really some madness. He's trying now f5, f4. There are f6 ideas to kick away the knight. As I said, still many things have to be calculated. This is a pretty equal position, but the main plan of white didn't work like he wanted to do. His minority attack got a little bit slowed down because also, look at this, the knight on d6 is controlling the square b5 that white would love, of course, to play. And the knight is pretty good here on, of course, in the center, controls this very important square c4 and e4. So let's see now another example. Look at this. As I said, also as our defensive strategy, this flexible pawn structure can be really useful, because now even if b5 happens, we can still have the move c5. So here it was a beautiful game play by Nigel Short. He played rook to e1, rook to a8, pardon me, queen to b3. Now he played a5. Because of this flexibility of his pawn structure, he can even allow himself to run into the minority attack by using the majority attack. A really great strategy here by Nigel Short. And after move b5, you don't want to take, of course, here, because then you have a backward pawn on b6. But now with the move c5, d takes c5, b takes c5, it's, I think, a solid pawn structure. Look at this now. These two pawns are controlling very important squares. Okay, this is now the hanging pawn structure. It's maybe not the optimal pawn structure that we want to get, but it's much better, I think, than this pawn structure that you can get when you have a backward pawn and a weak square on c5. So here, after move b takes c5, the bishop took out the knight, because the knight was very annoying, attacked always the d5 pawn. And now with knight to d7, we have queen to b6, and suddenly black is perfectly fine, has now two flexible pawns, has now the opportunity to maybe break in the center. So at least in my opinion, black has defended the position. Still, this is a battle, this is a struggle, but nothing special also, I think, here in white's position. So these are the most important concepts. So also, as I said here, this is also a very important position that we wanted to get. As I said, maybe the material is equal. Okay, you have a backward pawn on c6, but sometimes you can use this rook cliff defense as your main defensive strategy, using the rook as a defender of the c6. But look at this, the rook is coming on g6, the queen is maybe coming on g5. You can create a battery. Knight on f3 then is a possibility, knight to g2. So although here white has a dominant position on the queen side, the knight is on c5, the backward pawn on c6, but what's the point about this attack? You're attacking basically nothing, because nothing is happening there anymore. Now the game changed simply towards the king side. So this is also a concept that I think you should be familiar with, but when you didn't find any better solutions, this is also a nice idea. Rook to d6, rook to g6, and you're perfectly fine. Maybe then you can skip, as I said, with the queen, play flexible. Maybe the knight can come into the game when the queen leaves, maybe the f5, knight on f5. So you will find, I think, your way into the game, but don't be scared sometimes. Okay, you have this strategic weakness, but your opponent is not attacking anything. That's, I think, the point about this particular position. So okay, this will be it about the pawn majority attack, but also the defense against the pawn minority attack, pardon me. I hope you got the grip. we cannot really study everything here. We cannot really study openings and go move per move. These are just concepts. These are just pictures that you have to memorize in your own head if you want to make progress, of course, in chess. In my opinion, this is useful because many of these attacks you will play, many of these attacks you'll face, and then then you want to know, of course, what to do. Here I think we have sorted out the most important ideas and the most important concepts, and I really hope that you like this video. So okay, see you soon with some more chess and strategy tactics video. If you want to see more about strategic concepts and the basic plans in chess, check out my basics in chess series videos. Here's a whole playlist. We have more than 160 videos about chess strategy here, and you can also check out my Become a Master in Chess series. So we have started this series recently also with the most important ideas in chess. So see you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.